You meditate every day. You practice gratitude. You read about consciousness, about awakening, about presence. You know the concepts. You speak the language. You genuinely feel like you're on the right path. And yet, the same patterns keep repeating themselves. The same relationships keep hurting you in the same ways. The same anxiety keeps showing up. Only now it has a more spiritual name. The same anger. Only now you call it healthy boundaries. The same avoidance. Only now it feels like enlightenment. There's a name for this. And it's one of the most common, and one of the most dangerous phenomena in modern spirituality and personal development. It's called spiritual bypassing. And in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 signs that you might be trapped in it, and what you can do to break free. Pay close attention, because one of these 5 signs will probably make you uncomfortable. And that discomfort is exactly the point. What is spiritual bypassing? The term was coined in the 1980s by transpersonal psychologist John Welwood. He noticed something deeply troubling in the spiritual communities around him. People were using spiritual ideas and practices to avoid dealing with unresolved psychological wounds. Instead of healing, spirituality had become anesthesia. Welwood defined spiritual bypassing as the use of spiritual beliefs and practices to sidestep unresolved emotional issues, unmet developmental needs, and unfinished psychological work. Put simply, it's using the light to avoid looking at the darkness. The problem isn't spirituality itself. The problem begins when spirituality becomes an escape, when meditation becomes a way of avoiding painful emotions, when forgiveness becomes a substitute for processing anger, when saying everything happens for a reason becomes an excuse for never asking what actually happened. Jung had a concept that fits this perfectly. He called it psychic inflation. It happens when the ego identifies with archetypes far greater than it has actually integrated: wisdom, enlightenment, transcendence, and uses that identification to avoid the real work of confronting the shadow. The person isn't becoming more conscious. They're simply building a more sophisticated spiritual persona to hide the very same unintegrated material they've always carried. Neuroscience helps explain why this is so seductive. The human brain is biologically wired to avoid pain. When spiritual practices provide immediate relief, and very often they do, the nervous system begins associating spirituality with escape. What was meant to become a tool for integration turns into yet another avoidance strategy. Now, let's look at the 5 signs. Sign 1: you use love and light to avoid real conflict. The first sign is probably the most common and the hardest to recognize, precisely because it looks like virtue. You avoid conflict in the name of harmony. You swallow your anger in the name of unconditional love. You forgive far too quickly, not because you've processed the pain, but because feeling angry no longer feels spiritual. You smile when you should speak. You give in when you should set a boundary, and you call all of it inner peace. But genuine inner peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the ability to remain present with discomfort, without being destroyed by it, and still choose honesty. Research by Gabor Mate and other experts in psychoneuroimmunology shows what happens when anger is chronically suppressed. Those emotions don't disappear. They reorganize themselves inside the body as chronic tension, as exhaustion, as illnesses that seem to have no obvious explanation. Anger by itself isn't a spiritual problem. It's information. It tells you that a boundary has been crossed, that something needs to change, that an injustice needs to be acknowledged. Jung believed that every rejected emotion is pushed into the shadow, and whatever enters the shadow always finds another way to express itself. Usually, not one you consciously choose. So the real question isn't, how do I get rid of my anger? It's, what is my anger trying to tell me? How do you begin changing this? Start learning the difference between reactivity and authentic expression. Reactivity means your emotions are controlling you. Authentic expression means you consciously give those emotions a voice. Through therapy, through journaling, or inside relationships that are emotionally safe. Feeling is not the same as acting impulsively, and suppressing is not the same as transcending. Sign 2: you understand everything, but you feel nothing. You can talk about trauma with flawless clinical vocabulary. You understand the stages of grief. You know how the autonomic nervous system works. You know what the window of tolerance is. You understand dissociation. You've read Jung. You've read Bessel van der Kolk. You've read Gabor Mate. You can connect all the dots intellectually. But then someone asks you a simple question. How are you really feeling? And suddenly, there's a strange silence, or an answer that's almost too polished, too organized, too rational, without any real emotional texture. This is intellectual spiritual bypassing, and it's especially common among intelligent, curious people, because the mind can become an extraordinarily sophisticated escape route. Neuroscience has a name for the underlying pattern: low-level dissociation, not the dramatic form described in clinical textbooks, but a subtle separation between the cortex, where thinking happens, and the limbic system in the body, where emotions actually live. Instead of feeling their emotions, the person thinks about them. They analyze them, categorize them, explain them, and that creates the illusion of processing, when in reality, they're avoiding the experience itself. Peter Levine, the creator of somatic experiencing, argues that trauma is not resolved through intellectual understanding alone. The nervous system has to complete response cycles that were interrupted when the original experience occurred, and those cycles don't finish through analysis. They finish through the body. So here's a simple practice. The next time you catch yourself analyzing an emotional experience, pause. Shift your attention away from your thoughts and toward your body. Where do you feel it? Your chest, your throat, your stomach, your jaw. What happens to your breathing? Is there tension somewhere? Don't rush to understand it. Just stay with the sensation. Understanding will come later, and when it does, it will be grounded in something much deeper than theory. It will be grounded in lived experience. Sign 3. You forgive before you've actually healed. I've already forgiven them. I'm not holding any resentment. I've let it go. This is one of the most sophisticated forms of spiritual bypassing, and one of the hardest to recognize, because forgiveness is, in itself, a genuinely beautiful value. But there's a profound difference between forgiveness that comes after grief and forgiveness that's used to skip grief altogether. Premature forgiveness, forgiveness that happens before you've fully allowed yourself to feel the anger, the sadness, the betrayal, isn't really forgiveness. It's suppression, wearing spiritual clothing, and your nervous system knows the difference, even if your mind doesn't. When you forgive without processing what happened, the unresolved emotion doesn't disappear. It simply moves into the shadow, and from there, it begins influencing your life in ways you no longer recognize. You may become overly controlling. You may develop a vague distrust of people without knowing why. You may sabotage healthy relationships because somewhere deep inside, you're still expecting to be betrayed again. Jung believed that whatever remains unintegrated will always find a way to express itself, rarely the way you would consciously choose. The philosopher Paul Ricoeur made an important distinction between forgiveness and forgetting. Real forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms your relationship with the past. But transformation requires something first. What happened has to be fully acknowledged. It has to be felt, grieved, named honestly. Only then can forgiveness become something real. So before asking yourself, how do I forgive this? Ask a different question. Have I actually allowed myself to feel what this did to me? Grief is not weakness. It's the process through which the psyche integrates loss, betrayal, and pain. Don't skip that process. The forgiveness that comes afterward is completely different and infinitely more authentic. Sign 4. You use spirituality to feel superior. This is probably the most uncomfortable sign to admit, because no one likes to think of themselves as spiritually arrogant. And yet, it's one of the clearest indicators that spiritual bypassing is still at work. Maybe you've caught yourself quietly judging people who just don't get it. People who haven't awakened yet. Maybe you feel a subtle impatience toward those who don't speak the same spiritual language you do. Maybe you've started using ideas like consciousness, vibration, energy, or awakening, less to help others, and more to distinguish yourself from them. Without realizing it, your spiritual journey has become part of your identity, and identities always want to protect themselves. Jung described this as ego inflation through identification with archetypes. The spiritual persona becomes another strategy for the ego to feel special. Ironically, the very practices that were meant to dissolve the ego end up strengthening it. Authentic spiritual growth doesn't make you feel superior. It makes you more humble, because the deeper you go, the more clearly you see how much of yourself still remains unexplored. Spiritual arrogance is almost always a sign that someone is standing near the surface, where the concepts shine brightly, but the mirror hasn't truly been faced. The most rigorous wisdom traditions have warned about this for centuries. In Zen Buddhism, there's a concept known as Dharma sickness. It describes practitioners who use spiritual teachings to build a stronger identity, instead of allowing those teachings to dissolve it. In Sufism, the greatest obstacle on the path is the nafs, the ego, disguised as devotion. So what do? Treat your spiritual practice as a mirror, not a pedestal. The next time you notice that subtle feeling of superiority, don't judge yourself for it. Get curious. See it as information, not evidence that you've become enlightened, but evidence that something still wants to be seen. Instead of asking, why don't they understand? Ask yourself something much more revealing. What part of me needs them to understand so I can feel okay? That question has the power to change everything. Sign 5. You use spirituality to escape the present. The fifth sign is perhaps the most ironic of all, because nearly every authentic spiritual tradition teaches the exact opposite of what this pattern creates. You begin using meditation, rituals, spiritual practices, and mystical concepts, not to enter the present moment, but to escape it. Real life, your difficult relationships, your responsibilities, your financial struggles, the decisions you've been avoiding, all start to feel too dense, too ordinary, too unspiritual. And little by little, your spiritual practice becomes a refuge from life, instead of a resource for life. It's escape, with an altar. The philosopher Ken Wilber, who spent decades exploring the intersection of psychology and spirituality, made an essential distinction here: the difference between states and stages. You can have profound spiritual experiences, moments of extraordinary beauty, deep peace, expanded awareness, even genuine mystical states. And yet, you may not have developed the psychological maturity necessary to integrate those experiences into everyday life. A beautiful state, without the corresponding inner development, is like waking from an incredible dream and remembering almost none of it. The experience doesn't transform you, because there isn't enough psychological structure for it to take root. Neuroscience says something remarkably similar. The nervous system doesn't regulate itself through escape, not physical escape, and not spiritual escape. It regulates through contact. Contact with the present moment, contact with the body, contact with other people, contact with reality, especially when reality is uncomfortable. Dr. Bonnie Badenoch, a leading expert in interpersonal neurobiology, has shown that genuine nervous system regulation happens through connection, not isolation, not even prolonged meditative isolation. So pay attention to something very simple. Notice whether your spiritual practice brings you closer to life or farther away from it. If meditation leaves you more present, more emotionally available, more capable of facing discomfort, more connected to the people around you, that's integration. But if meditation leaves you detached, less patient with ordinary life, constantly wishing you could escape into another spiritual experience, that deserves an honest investigation, because spirituality was never meant to replace life. It was meant to help you live it more fully. How to break free from spiritual bypassing. Breaking free from spiritual bypassing doesn't mean abandoning spirituality. It means deepening it. It means accepting that the journey back to yourself inevitably leads through the very places you've been trying to avoid. The shadow doesn't disappear because you repeat affirmations. The inner child isn't healed through positive thinking alone. Integration is something entirely different from transcendence, and it's far more demanding. Jung believed that individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole, requires a descent before any true ascent. The alchemists express the same truth through a simple phrase: solviti coagula. First, dissolve. Only then can something more authentic take shape. You cannot build upon what you've never been willing to examine. In practical terms, this means bringing the same seriousness you devote to your spiritual practice into your emotional and psychological life. Therapy isn't the opposite of spirituality. For many people, it's one of the most honest paths back to it. Working with the body isn't less sacred than meditation. It's often where transformation becomes real, where insight finally becomes embodied. The kind of spirituality that truly changes a person doesn't leave you comfortably floating above your wounds. It brings you face to face with them. It asks you to look where you've spent years refusing to look. It doesn't offer only peace. It asks for honesty. It doesn't promise only love. It demands courage. So if you recognize yourself in any of these 5 signs, don't turn this into another reason to criticize yourself. Don't make self-awareness another weapon against yourself. Use it as a doorway. The simple fact that you can now recognize one of these patterns means a new level of consciousness already exists, one that wasn't there before. And honest awareness is always the beginning of transformation. The deepest spirituality isn't the kind that distances you from human suffering. It's the kind that gives you the courage to walk straight into it and discover that you can come out the other side. That's the work, and whether you realize it or not, you've already begun. If this video helped put words to something you've been feeling for a long time, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know in the comments, which of these 5 signs did you recognize most in yourself? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.